Welcome to Armchair Travel. My name is Jackie Thompson. I work at the Woodstock Public Library. Tonight I'm very pleased to welcome back Green and Carol VandenEngel for the presentation, Canoe for Change. This was on, okay. And Glenn, I'll pass it over to you to share your story.
Carol and I would like to thank Jackie Thompson and the Woodstock Public Library for allowing us to be involved in their Armchair Travel series. If viewers have any questions, please feel free to contact us through our website at canoeforchange.ca and send us an email and we'll get back in touch with you. We understand viewers have joined us from coast to coast today, from Victoria, British Columbia to places in Nova Scotia. And we also have a paddler who's tuned in from New Zealand. Welcome. We all have an attraction to the water's edge, whether we realize it or not. So if you live near the shores of Lake Ontario, Lake Huron, or Lake Winnipeg, perhaps you reside near the shores of the Ottawa River, the St. Lawrence River, or perhaps at Alt's Cove near the Northumberland Strait. We invite you to view our attraction, the water's edge, as we paddle 8,515 kilometers across Canada in our canoe. We decided to embark on this journey during Canada's 150th anniversary of Confederation, and we left Ottawa in 2017, and it's the purple line on the right-hand side of this map, and we paddled to Sydney, Nova Scotia. The following year, 2018, the orange line, we started in Vancouver, British Columbia, and made our way as far as we could until the paddling season ended. And we ended up in Fort Frances late in the fall. Finishing off for 2019, the green line, we started at Fort Frances where we finished and made our way back to the nation's capital where we started. And subsequently, we had to paddle home the black line south to Kingston, Ontario, where we both reside. We had a nice send-off from Peachtree Island in Ottawa with a warm send-off from friends and relatives. We took with us on the first 4 days of our journey our eldest granddaughter, and she lasted 4 days with us. Hopefully she has some fond memories. We also invited people to paddle with us anytime they could. And Carol's brother, Paul, and his wife, Denise, made sure that we headed off to start our journey, heading in the right direction down the Ottawa River. At Clarion Locks was our first adventure in doing the locks to get around rapids, and we're moored safely behind these leisure craft, and we had our first taste of traveling through the locks. Typical camp location for us was wherever we could find some available real estate, whether it be a city park along the shoreline or just along the wharf at the Lachine Canal. This is a series of 5 locks that go around the rapids where the 2 rivers, the St. Lawrence and the Ottawa River meet. And this is how we get into the St. Lawrence River. And here we had to compete with cruise ships and lake freighters as we navigate the St. Lawrence River. We were making good time on this river, just leaving the locks until the Coast Guard tracked us down and informed us we were in the main chipping lanes. And through a megaphone, they announced that we had to remove ourselves from the chipping lanes and paddle closer to the shore, which we most heartily agreed to. Some of the other obstacles that we had to deal with along the river were tides, and we wanted to enter this fishing harbor, but unfortunately the tide had come in, receded, and left us high and dry on the mud. It was probably an hour and a bit later that the water came back in and we were able to paddle forward. This is our canoe setup. It's a carbon Kevlar prospector design canoe. Empty, it weighs 38 pounds. We had it fitted with a custom splash deck to repel the ocean waves, big, large waves, and it worked well for us. Getting on in the season, we left in August, and as we made our way down the East Coast, autumn was settling in, and the geese were flying north, and we beckoned them to return. It was too soon for them to leave. Hadn't finished yet. This is a Le Petit Thames bicycle trail that leads from Trois-Rivières over close to Edmundston, New Brunswick. We found this by accident, but we were sure glad that we came upon it. We used it as a portage to make our way to our next water source, where we had thought we were going to travel through back roads and camp in ditches or farmers' fields on the way. We were able to find great comfort along this trail and actually find campsites and some very secluded spots. One morning we woke up to fog, had to make our way down some rapids, but we didn't want to just wholeheartedly jump in the water and go blindly. So we're gently easing ourselves into the water, Carol keeping a close eye on what was coming up through the rapids. This is another campsite we had the opportunity to stay at. It's not a campsite. It was an airport float plane, seaplane runway, but it was the only piece of dry land we could find that was accessible. So we parked close to the water's edge, and we didn't think they'd mind if we just stayed there for one night. Further downriver, we came across hydroelectric dams, more rapids. You can see the rugged shoreline. The rocks were not sharp, they were smooth, but they were plentiful. But we had to camp here and lay out our thermarest thin mattresses, inflate them, and it did the trick. It took the bumps out. This would be a typical portage that one would do camping or backwoods hiking or canoeing. And we're going around a falls here, canoe over the head. And of course, we make trips to bring our gear down to match up the equipment. Here's the famous Confederation Bridge joining the mainland to Prince Edward Island. And we had the opportunity to paddle underneath it. It's quite an engineering marvel. It's quite a span. Lots of seals accompanied us as we paddled underneath this. They were very curious and teasing as they followed our canoe and would surface and then duck down underneath the water. This was a nice campsite we had. The locals call this Paradise Beach. You see where the tent is, and just in front of the tent, someone has placed a post and secured it with some rocks. And I believe that would be the high water mark. And you can see just how close to the water's edge we were. Very colorful, typical of the East Coast, brightly colored homes and buildings. It's beautiful. Fishing harbor where we had the opportunity to moor into. We did make use of some day use parks. It was late in the season. The park rangers didn't mind that we camped for one night and made use of the picnic table. It was the off season and they didn't mind much. They understood what we were doing. I'm going to show two slides here. This would be the tide in, oops, went the wrong way, tide out. That's the tide in and the tide out. So you can see the stark contrast of how much water actually is removed when the tide recedes. And it's a wonder we didn't get stuck more high and dry. The tide changes the further east you go, and the degree at which the water leaves also changes the further east you go. Making our way down into the Lake Bador, we came across this island. We were blowing off course, blowing to the island. This island had no residents on it. It was vacant when we got there. A church, we had our tent put up beside the church to shelter us from the winds. And there was all kinds of small outbuildings. And the next day, the winds did not diminish, and we had to travel inland and do portaging. But during the course of the night, on the mainland, there was a roadway up high, and the frequency of cars that would come to the edge of the hilltop and then shine their lights down upon the church was very frequent and illuminated our tent right up with the light, just illuminated it. And we couldn't figure out why there was such a high volume of traffic frequenting this area. But as we reached the mainland to do our portage because of this windy day, we found that this was called Chapel Island, and it's an island that the local bands of the First Nations come together every summer for their festive meetings, powwows, and talk about their communities, and the elders make important decisions. And we met a gentleman on the mainland, and we informed him that we were on Chapel Island for the night, and hope that they did not mind. And he informed us that the entire community knew that we were there, hence the frequencies of cars coming to visit to see what type of a tent was on the island. And of course, when we made it to the mainland, they knew our story a bit more, and they didn't mind in the least. The fall colors of Cape Breton, beautiful, striking. This time of the season, late fall, the eastern seaboard coast had been experiencing hyperactive hurricanes. It was a very frequent hurricane season, and yeah, we experienced a lot of wind moving east that year. That's our tarp just snapping in the wind there. And we arrive at Sydney, Nova Scotia. and do a little celebration there. We pick up the charge in 2018, but not before replenishing at home our supplies. Carol was extremely busy dehydrating and vacuum sealing fruits, vegetables, legumes, and they were all packed up into our barrel. And we also had some supplies boxed up, handed over to some friends who would, when we contacted them, would send them out at a predetermined, yet to be known location for us to pick up and restock along the way. This is what a typical rehydrated meal looks like, and it's all about the presentation, folks, and it's very nice. Picking up the charge again, like I said, we headed out to Vancouver on the Canadian One, the train. Took us 4 or 5 days to get out there. Did our first portage out west through Pacific Station, and then made our way down to, it was called Grass Creek, and put in at Vancouver, and made our way to Pacific, passing past condominiums and businesses. And we're going to head to the mouth of the Fraser River. The Fraser River flows west, was not in our favor, but we made it as far as we could, competing with the pulp and paper industry, sea barges, tugboats, very industrial area, very busy with the boat traffic. And we made our way to Hope. And at Hope, we turned our canoe in for some acquired bicycles that we prearranged and had lined up for us in Hope. We put our canoe in a sea cargo container on land along with some supplies, minimized our gear, and proceeded to bicycle a part of the way, taking into account that this is a vacation for us. It's not a race. We're considering this a retirement cruise as well as a fundraiser, but we're enjoying the scenery of Canada. So we're going to bike along the Kettle Valley Rail Trail system for a portion, and riding our bikes along a little bit of the highway to get to the trails. We noticed that there were some small piles of garbage neatly arranged along the side of the road. And when we stopped for lunch at this little creek, we met this gentleman, and everything that this gentleman owns is in that backpack that he's carrying. And we found out that his name is Eric, and Eric's homeless. And it was Eric that was cleaning up the roadside and trying to give a little bit back to Mother Nature for all that she's done for him. We gave Eric our lunch, and it brought a tear to his eyes. He was moved, we could tell, and it just reconfirmed to Carol and I that our fundraiser was all worth the effort for reasons like this. So along the rail trail, very picturesque. It's a converted railway line. The rail and the ties are gone. It's now a recreational leisure trail, but most evident of tunnels and beautiful trestle bridges going over mountain streams and rivers. Of course, all these rivers are flowing in the direction that's not suitable for us. That's why we're we're doing the bicycle portion of the trail. We met some wild horses. We just had camped here for the night. The horses arrived just before we decided to take down the tent, and they wouldn't pass. But once the tent collapsed, almost on a predetermined signal, they ran past and turned around to take a look at us, and as if to say while snorting, "Huh, we made it." Nice shot of the water behind us. Mountains. We're up on top of the mountains coming down. The bicycle trip could have been a story in itself. It's spring runoff from the mountains. Water levels are extremely high, and we're able to take a little shortcut through the corner here, right through the woods. So we're back on the water here for a short period of time. This is Nelson. This is the east arm of the Kootenay Lake. Wanted to take in this lake. It's spectacular as we paddle down the Kootenay Lake. Never had the opportunity before to paddle toward the mountain, and it was extremely gratifying. But unfortunately, we have to leave the water now and again make our way over the mountains. So we portaged our canoe along the roadway with the aid of our canoe cart. We attached the canoe to the cart and then load our gear in it. And we had an opportunity to go through a truck weigh station and roll over the scales to find out our canoe weighed 110 kilograms. Truckers didn't mind that we did this. They needed a break anyway. And we now know that we were well below the provincial load limit for the highways. Here we are bouncing back onto the water again. Every opportunity we had to find a river or a lake that was in our favor, we took advantage before we got back on the roadway. And this is highway number 3. And we've just come through that highway tunnel, running through it, of course, so we don't meet traffic. And this is a pinnacle point for us. We're at Crow's Nest Pass Summit. We're now just gonna leave British Columbia, head downhill into Wild Rose Country, Alberta. This is what we've been looking for. This is the Old Man River. This is our longest continuous stretch of running water, and didn't know that such a river existed cutting across through the prairies. It at times was a fast-flowing river, stirred up a lot of silt, a lot of mud. As you can see, I'm standing in some mud there. We didn't know that the American pelican was a bird that frequented Canada. They were quite prevalent throughout the prairies, and we even saw them into the far north of Ontario. Quite a comical bird and quite entertaining. A typical campsite along the river, a sandbar where we would pitch tent for the night. And then there's a typical setup for preparing a meal. This is in Saskatchewan, at Saskatchewan Landing. It was extremely windy day, forced us off the river. This is an actual golf course. If you look in the distance, you see a red flag. That's the flag for the third hole at the pin, and the flag is snapping. It's really windy, and unfortunately, we have to cut across the golf course to make our portage. But using our proper golf etiquette, we wait until the foursome is played through before we charge ahead. Prairie scene with the wheat grasses growing. The river is wider here. It's more shallow, blowing sand from the prairies. Fields of canola growing. Lots of sandbars that we can stop for the night on. While we were making our way north, we met a lot of fishermen, First Nations fishermen, and when we arrived at La Paw, they knew we were coming before we got there because they asked us if we were the paddlers, and we informed them that indeed we were. And we had numerous individuals come up and offer advice and give us advice and offer words of wisdom on what we could expect moving forward past La Paw. In La Paw, we had the opportunity to actually restock and rest a little bit. And we took a motel room for a couple of days, and this gentleman and his wife were traveling from La Paw. And since this gentleman has met us, he's contacted us every New Year's Eve to wish us a Happy New Year, and remembers us fondly. Were the bugs bad? At times they were. There's Carol donning a bug jacket, bug suit, as we rest for the day. This is Cedar Lake past La Paw. It's a man-made lake due to a hydroelectric dam at Grand Rapids. So this area over time has been flooded, and finding a place to camp on this flooded, large flooded lake was rather difficult. But we did find a little bit of real estate here to make camp for the night. This is the sun being obscured by smoke. When we were up north, there was various forest fires burning. Depending on which way the wind blew, determined which province the smoke from the forest fires were coming from. It was either Northern Ontario or Northern British Columbia. We found out later that British Columbia had a record-breaking year for the number of forest fires. On Lake Winnipeg, it was a bit of a challenge. We knew it would be. It's a large, shallow lake, very susceptible to large waves and wind action. Several days we were windbound on Lake Winnipeg. Crossing a rounding long point, we were forewarned it could be treacherous. It was a bit of a challenge. It's a long peninsula that reaches out towards the center of Lake Winnipeg. We had a long, tiring day trying to make it around this point. There was no real place for us to put into shore if problems arose because of the rugged terrain. But we did have our eye on this upcoming sandy cove that we spotted. But after a long day, windy day, wavy day, wave battling day. We did capsize trying to make our way to this beach. So this is our gear all spread out, drying. We're doing a quick inventory of what's wet, what's dry. Fortunately, with the configuration of our canoe with that splash deck, it held in, retained all of our gear. We didn't lose anything. Just shortly after we set up camp on this location, we noticed two individuals walking towards us at a distance down the beach, and they were First Nations men, and they had rifles slung over their shoulders, and we were quite shocked to see them, where we hadn't seen anybody for days, and they were up high on the cliff at a family outing, and they were watching us paddle towards this cove. But as they watched, we would appear and reappear behind each large wave, and then we completely disappeared, they said, and they came down to investigate. And I said that you know, I thanked them for that. And I said, that's really nice, but why do you have the rifles with you? And they said, well, we didn't know what we were going to find. This beach is frequented by wolves and bears. And they suggested we build a large fire. So we did that night. The next morning, two other individuals from that camp came down just to check on us, make sure we were all right, gave us some encouraging words and told us what to expect going down the shoreline of Lake Winnipeg, and then left us to return to their camp. And when Carol and I broke camp and left an hour later, all those individuals from that camp up on the cliff had made their way down to the shoreline and were shouting and waving encouraging words to us as we paddled by, and it was quite heartfelt. Typical beach campsite on Lake Winnipeg. They're plentiful, they're beautiful, but they are quite exposed to the wind. This is a wolf imprint in the sand, and of course Carol's toes, but it's a large wolf. Canoe parked on the beach. A little later on the Winnipeg River, we had an opportunity to camp at a day park, and we found out that late in the season, as it's getting, the bears are bulking up on acorn nuts underneath the oak trees, and there was a lot of bears in this park, but they were more interested in feasting on the nuts, and we left them alone and they left us alone, but we always kept a watchful eye out on one another. On the Rainy River, I'm purifying or sterilizing some water using an ultraviolet light pen that we dip into our Nalogen bottle from the water we just scooped directly out of the river. So in 2018, we made it to Fort Frances, headed back home with the assistance of Carol's brother, who drove out from Kingston to Fort Frances along with his wife and picked us up and transported us home. And then 2019, they drove us back to Fort Frances so that we could continue our journey and make it back to Ottawa and home. So we're starting out 2019. We're at the Rainy River. We made use of a sail that we brought with us that collapses, tucks nicely underneath the seat. Along the boundary waters separating Minnesota from Ontario, the USA from Canada. It's an official border line right down the middle, and it was quite amazing to, within a paddle's reach, touch the shore of the USA or touch the shore of Canada. Beautiful scenery, the Canadian Shield. Water is a little bit clearer here. Lake Superior, this is the base of the sleeping giant. With us, we took a bug shelter as well as our bug suits. This gave us a little bit more comfort where we could actually sit inside the screen room and have a meal. Lake Superior, fog banks rolled in just at a moment's notice. And within minutes, we would be engulfed by this fog bank, so thick, in fact, that I had to bring out the GPS and navigate with the GPS. Along Lake Superior, the water is extremely cold, but if you're lucky enough, you can find a sauna. The area of Thunder Bay has a large Finnish population, and they're fond of their saunas where you can go in, heat up the stove, wood stove, bucket of lake water on it, throw it onto the rocks, get some steam. Once you're all hot and toasty, run into the near freezing water, cool off, repeat, rinse, and enjoy. Starting out one morning, Superior's coastline full of little caves to investigate, beautiful scenery. Beaches range along Superior from gravelly sand to cobblestone rocks to boulders to flat rock. It's quite diverse. This is Cascade Falls along the Pukasa Park area down the coast of Superior. This was a favorite location of the famous Canadian paddler and artist Bill Mason. Carol and I were windbound for a few days on this beach, but we thought of no better place we'd like to be than on this beach for a couple of days. If you're fortunate enough to spot these, there are little pockets of water nestled high up on the rocks that get plenty of sunshine when the sun's out, and the water up here is warmed by the sun, and it's actually tolerable to bathe in if you can stand it. And like I said, the shoreline is cobblestone beaches, large boulders. Here's a typical shot. Here's cobblestone rocks. This is a launching technique we were showing where you take two large pieces, long pieces of driftwood, place them side by side, put your canoe on top of the logs, then load your gear and push your canoe and then immerse it into the water rather than try and stand on these rolly rocks in the water while you pass one another the gear and get battered upon by the waves trying to do so. Beautiful sunset, or maybe it's sunrise. And this is another sun setting, rising photo. We make our way off of Lake Superior, Lake Huron. We're heading into the Georgian Bay region now. French River, making our way closer to home. It's a beautiful destination spot, the French River, for canoeists, paddlers, kayakers, and you can see why. This is the Mattawa River, which connects North Bay over to Mattawa. It's a historic waterway used by early explorers. And the portage trails are today as they were back then. And this is why you have to portage at times around waterfalls, or in some cases, low water and exposed boulders. This is the Ottawa River heading towards, of course, the nation's capital. Lots of places to camp along the Ottawa River, further away from the actual city, of course. And we arrive in Ottawa, but not quite to our starting point, which is just a little bit further east of Ottawa. Along the way to our starting point, we pick up our eldest granddaughter and her younger brother, who wanted to finish the journey with us, the journey that she started 3 years before. And once we did get to our finish line, we started the next day to head home along the Rideau Canal, which was built by Colonel John By to connect Kingston to Bytown, which is now Ottawa. It is now primarily a leisure waterway where in years gone by, when it was built, it was a area to retreat and relocate the capital in the war with our southern neighbors. Nice to camp along the canal system, plenty of campsites. And we knew our trip was assisting food security. And once we got to Kingston, Carol was surprised by her mother and her brother that paddled out to greet us and paddle us back into Kingston with the canoe that Carol originally learned how to paddle in. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed.
Just 1 second.